Talk about disappointment. You know, recently we all waited very anxiously for the Raila Odinga interview on Citizen TV. And so the interview came, and personally, if I can talk for myself, I anticipated fireworks. I anticipated big revelations about the way forward. Because this man being interviewed is one of the most powerful people in Kenya today. Oh, it never happened. Raila Odinga even said that he's not in government. He said he has no influence. And it's not that Hussein Mohammed didn't ask the right questions. He asked all of them, and then some. Yeah, but there was no information coming out of Raila Odinga. In fact, the mysteries surrounding the famous handshake deepened after this particular interview. And so, let's try and figure out what was going on here. What really happened here? Now, for starters, in case you didn't know, Raila Odinga has handlers. Yeah, people who prepare him for these interviews. Yeah, they look at expected questions that are bound to be fired at him, and he prepares himself. Indeed, any major politician appearing on TV must have handlers to prepare them. At least at Raila Odinga's level, yeah, at such a high level of politics, you can't do without handlers to prepare you. Now, let's start with the question that Raila Odinga refused to answer. Yeah, he said he did not want to talk about that subject. For those who watch this interview, yeah, you will know what it is. He did not want to talk about Miguna. Although he mentioned that Bwana Miguna has said some very nasty things about him. Clearly, Raila found some of the things Miguna said very hurtful. Now, personally, I found this very interesting. I did not think that Miguna would get to Raila. But then I guess when you have been an insider, yeah, in somebody's office, it's very easy to get hurtful because you know the person rather well. But the most fascinating thing I took away from this interview was that at the beginning, clearly, Raila Odinga was nervous about something. And I've watched very many Raila Odinga interviews over the years. Yeah, I have never seen in his body language signs of nervousness. If you missed that one, just go back to the interview and check out the beginning. Yeah, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. As I always say on this channel, yeah, politicians read their body language. Yeah, and Raila Odinga is a politician, last time I checked. And he's a great Kenyan, yes, but there are people who worship him. There are people who Raila can do no wrong. But folks, that is the truth. Now, we can also say this was an interview of contradictions. Raila Odinga contradicted himself several times. He said very bluntly that he has no influence and is not in government. But then, in another question, he said, he actually was being asked why he doesn't call press conferences nowadays the way he used to. Yeah, he said the reason why is because instead, now he just picks up the phone and talks to the president. Now. Is that influence or is it not influence? Something else he said. He said, yeah, in very clear terms, that the murder, yeah, the horrific murder of former IEBC computer guru, Chris Msando, will be probed. Action will be taken. And he was very sure, he sounded at least very sure, when he was saying this. Again, I ask the same question. Yeah, somebody who does not have influence, would they be capable of making such an assurance? So why was Raila so cagey? Yeah, why was he so uncustomarily tight-lipped? Yeah, as far as revealing information, as far as giving people a clear picture of what is happening and where we're headed. Why? In my view, it's because these handshake manenos have reached a very, very delicate point. What exactly do I mean by delicate? Well, let me give you a very brief story here. When we were kids, there's a game we used to play. Now, in those days, believe it or not, the Nairobi City Council, as it was called in those days, used to supply most homes with dustbins, very high quality iron dustbins. Now the lid of this dustbin was fairly heavy, heavy enough to use for another game we used to play, where we used to trap birds. Yeah, you place the dustbin delicately on a stick, you tie a rope next to the stick, and then you put bait, seeds, maize, things which would attract birds. And then you stand far away out of sight, and then you wait for a bird to wander under that big dustbin lid, and then you pull the stick, and you've trapped your bird. Now, when you had already put all the bait, all the stuff to attract birds, and you're hidden, and you see a bird starting to approach, that is a very delicate moment. Once we reached this delicate moment, and then my kid brother, whom we used to play this game with, started asking me, "Oh, Dad was complaining about your mathematics results." Yeah, it's true, in primary school, I had issues with mathematics, which were miraculously solved in high school by a teacher I'll never forget, who came up with a system that helped me a lot. It was not comfortable at that time, but I'm very grateful now. What he did, he used to give us tests, and then he'd hang the test results in the most visible school notice board, so that everybody would pass and see what Chris scored in a math test. Folks, that made me sit up and pay attention to my mathematics, or math, as Americans like to call it. And I ended up doing very well beyond my expectations in the final exams in 4th form. Anyway, this was not my point here. This was not the time to bring up issues about my mathematics. It was a delicate moment. Now, I believe beyond any inkling of doubt in my mind that the handshake has reached an extremely delicate moment. The birds are wandering, straight into the trap, and we need to time the pulling of the stick just right so that no bird escapes. This is not the time to start asking me about my mathematics. In other words, folks, the handshake is about to start hitting the headlines in a very major way, in a more major way than it has done in the past. And just before I started making this recording, I was kicking myself. I was wondering why I did not see, why I did not predict that Raila Odinga would be very guarded, more guarded than he has ever been in this particular interview. Because I already had information, before the interview, about issues to do with the handshake that should have enabled me to figure this out. But I didn't. Now, in case you don't believe me when I say that Raila was very, very guarded in this interview, and customarily so, then sample the following. On the same day this interview took place, indeed earlier, Raila Odinga met with 17 MPs from Western Kenya, and they were led by Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya. And at that meeting, Raila Odinga made some very confident promises. Number one, he promised to have leaders from the region incorporated into government. Now, isn't that such a huge promise from somebody who is not in government and has no influence? Number two, he promised to do something about reviving the two major sugar companies in Western Kenya, which the people in the area rely very heavily on. This is Mumias and Zoia. Both of them are in a very precarious situation, on the verge of complete shutdown. He promised to take action on that. Again, that's a huge one. That's the kind of promise only the president would make. But Raila Odinga is making it. His Excellency Raila Odinga is making such a promise. And having followed Raila Odinga's career for decades, I can tell you one thing. You can be sure If Raila Odinga promises you something, things will happen. Barring something very extraordinary and unexpected happening, those promises will be fulfilled. And so, carefully observing the meeting with leaders from Western Kenya and then taking in the interview with Citizen TV, you can see there's a problem. There is a huge contradiction. Now, before I go, let us examine exactly what I mean here in greater detail when I say the handshake has reached a very delicate point. Number one, the handshake is about to rise to a higher level. There's been talk of a government of national unity. Raila Odinga yesterday promised leaders from Western Kenya to have their people incorporated into government. All this points to a major reshuffle within government. Now, on the eve of something like that happening, it is completely the wrong move and the wrong play for Raila Odinga to start having any inkling of pushing around his weight, or being interviewed on national television and portraying just how powerful he is. This is the wrong moment. It could very easily create political complications. People could start asking, who is Raila Odinga after all? Why is he so powerful? Why do we need him? And that is why it has made a lot of sense for Raila Odinga to play his game, this game of the handshake, chini ya maji. Low-key, but very effective in getting things moving and in getting things done. You know, it's very easy to mess something at the 11th hour. Let's take the example of a soccer game. You've held your opponents, you have scored one goal, they have not scored anything, and these are the last minutes of defense. That's normally where people mess up. They make a mistake at the 11th hour, which usually turns out to be very costly. So the last minutes of something are extremely important and you need to be very alert. So maybe that is where Raila Odinga was nervous at the beginning of the interview, because he was about to do something he has never done before. And that is to say absolutely nothing on a national live TV interview that was much anticipated. Anyway, the other reason why I say that this is a very delicate moment has to do with Senator Moses Wetangula. And I'll cover that in greater detail in a subsequent video. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.